Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay? This is working, right? So let's see if I can make this work. I'm going to fail the first test otherwise. So Ruben asked me to show up today and spend a bit of time talking to you about what I do as part of my day job. So I spent the last, I've been at Salesforce for just over 8 years now, and I spent the first few years of my time at Salesforce selling software. So the stuff that we sell at Salesforce is enterprise application software. So, we're sort of like, we try to pitch ourselves as the Apple of the business software world. So, we're trying to, we're out there transforming markets, transforming industries through our technologies. What we offer is very, very disruptive. So, we pioneered the whole notion of delivering software over the cloud. Back in 1999, we set the business up, and now we're running at about $20 billion a year. So in terms of growth, that's been quite astronomical. And in terms of our position in the market, we pretty much cemented ourselves as the sort of market leader in the various spaces that we operate in. And that kind of growth presents all kinds of challenges. And those are the sorts of challenges that I've had to live with over the last 8 years at Salesforce. So when you're growing a company really, really quickly, you're looking to onboard people as quickly as possible. You're looking to recruit salespeople who are going to sell the licenses that help you sort of fuel that growth. And then off the back of the software license sales, you need to make sure you have all the supporting infrastructure around that to make sure the company can sustain and retain those customers. So what I'm going to talk about specifically is not so much my journey, because that's kind of very individual and probably a little bit boring, but I'm going to talk about what we do at Salesforce.com to make sure that against this backdrop of like phenomenal growth, how do we maintain a level of rationality, if you like? How do you not get caught up in the chaos? And how do you instill a sense of professionalism and direction and purpose within the people in that organization? And the way we do that, across all the functions inside Salesforce.com is we establish common languages. So in the customer service space, we have a common language and we have processes and systems in place that ensure that the objectives of the business in terms of customer retention, customer satisfaction are met. In the marketing organization, we do a similar kind of thing. So we have very specific processes and we have specific direction around how we reach out and acquire new customers. And the same in my organization, which is a sales organization. We make sure that whilst we have very talented, we're lucky because the Salesforce.com brand attracts the best people in the industry. So we have extraordinarily good people working in our sales organization. But even with that, people come with many years of experience, and that experience sometimes becomes like baggage if you're not careful. I need to make sure that these guys are able to perform and deliver, within the context of what we do at Salesforce. And what we do at Salesforce is very different in some cases to the kinds of backgrounds these guys have come from. So we have a common language, and we make sure that we use this common language across the sales organizations to ensure that when we talk about sales strategy, when we talk about deals, and we do reviews and that kind of thing, we're all on the same hymn sheet. I guess a lesson to you guys is if you're looking to launch your own companies, make sure you understand what your language is. Make sure you understand the market, what market it is that you're trying to sort of crack into, and establish your internal ways of working and kind of stick to those. And you can learn, I guess, some of that from this, and some of it will be your own, and dictated by your products and services. So the last time I did the presentation actually was probably about 6-7 years ago. And the reason for that is I don't actually do that much employee development anymore at Salesforce. We're at the point now where we hire people with sort of 10-15 years experience. And they pretty much hit the ground running. So a lot of my day job is, just kicking backsides and making sure that, the egos are kept intact and they perform and deliver according to our expectations. But the last time I did this was a good few years ago now, and I dedicated one day to each one of these boxes. So I have 30 minutes, right? So I'm going to do some serious compression here. And I've spoken to Gopal, who's in the room, and he's given me some algorithmic advice on how to compress his content into 30 minutes. So I'm going to give my best shot. But I think there are some, the thing with selling and pitching is most of it is actually down to common sense. And the stuff that I'm going to tell you, you're going to say, well, yeah, obviously. But I think the real challenge is when you're out in the field and you've got customers in front of you, and you've got the pressure of deal deadlines, and you've got the pressure of revenue, and if you've got a startup, you've got the pressure of keeping the lights on, that impacts your behavior, and it sometimes causes you to sort of behave and do things that might be unnatural. And throughout all of that, you've got to make sure that you always go back to basics with selling. There's no rocket science about any of it. It's about having a product or a service that people want and that people are prepared to pay for. And all you got to do is steer the customer or the prospect down a particular path so that they stay focused on your objective and at the same time you can deliver on their objectives. So the areas that I drill down on when I'm speaking to my sales guys are these areas. So I want them to assess the opportunity. When they're speaking to a customer or a prospect, what is the opportunity? And I'll drill down a bit more into one of these in just a moment. I need to be clear that the competitive strategy that they're setting is relevant to that particular prospect, because whatever you're selling, products or whatever, there's always going to be competition. And even if you guys are all really innovative, you're all sat here at one of the best seats of learning in the world, right? You're going to come up with really clever stuff, and by and large, you're going to come up with stuff that nobody else has done before, right? So you're going to think you're really innovative, you're going to think you're really new and good at this stuff, right? You're always going to have competition, right? And the first bit of competition you will get is that do nothing, right? The customer can always choose to do nothing, right? And you have to get your head around what the consequence of that customer doing nothing actually is. And so as a manager, as a director of a bunch of salespeople, I want to make sure that I understand what our competitive position is, and is our strategy suitable to that particular prospect. And then I'm going to go up to this point only, because we don't really have time for the rest of it. And you can have the rest of it, just send me a purchase order, and we can arrange some time, and we can have some coaching. And then, the key players in any organization. My experiences in selling into B2B, so business to business. So a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be relevant to B2B. If you're thinking about selling to B2C, it's a very different model. So don't take what I say too seriously if you're thinking about doing B2C sales. It's a very, very different way of doing things. But in B2B selling, if you're selling a product or a service to an organization, a large part of your success is going to be predicated on your knowledge of the people inside the organization and your ability to navigate the organization in a strategic and sort of thought-out way. And then once you understand who these people are, you start to define strategies for access, relationship development, and for ensuring that you're talking to the people that are going to help you get to that point of getting a purchase order out of them. So let's talk about opportunity assessment. So before I do this, quick show of hands, who's ever been in a sales situation before? Actually, and in these situations, who successfully actually managed to sell something and get money for it? That's pretty good. Okay. Who's had to do non-traditional selling? So selling yourself, selling an idea, pitching a concept, either within the academic domain, get some funding. Okay. So there's quite a bit of experience in the room. Okay. And those of you who've done this successfully, you're in a very fortunate position, because you can advise the guys who haven't done this probably as well as I can, to be honest with you, because the lessons and principles around convincing someone to think along the lines that you're thinking, and then to make a decision around that that involves parting with cash or compromising something. That skill set applies across the board, whether you're selling yourself, selling a product or service, or selling widgets, helicopters, whatever. So let's talk about opportunity assessment. Qualification of a deal before you start working on it is to me the number one most important thing that you ever will do when you're engaging with a prospect and you're trying to sell something to them. So if you imagine, we call the sales funnel, it's obvious, top of the funnel, lots of stuff goes into it. You're going to get interest, inquiries. You're doing this really cool thing which is AI focused, so it's the current zeitgeist. Everybody wants to know about it, so you're going to get lots of interest, right? And so you put stuff into the top of the funnel. The industry figure that we use at Salesforce is, for everything that you put into the funnel, if you get a third of it out the other end of the funnel, and that stuff translates into actual orders, then you've done really, really well. Okay. In many cases, it's less than a third, but we sort of work around a third. And the reason we do that is because when I look at my sales guys, and they might have like a $10 million target to meet by the end of the year. If they haven't got $30 million in their pipeline at the start of the year, it's not going to happen for them. So think about your funnel and think about the future. And the best way to increase the proportion of deals that actually convert into real business is to make sure that you don't put crap into it in the first place. Okay? It's very easy to get suckered into conversations and interest and just start putting stuff into your funnel. Because the moment something ends up in your funnel, you're committed to spending time with that prospect, conversations, meetings. They're going to want demos or whatever, right? And every minute that you put into that opportunity or that lead has to be for a very, very good reason. And unless you've asked the qualifying questions, you're not going to know, and you could be wasting a huge amount of time. My biggest frustration is when I work with salespeople happy ears, we call them happy ears. Someone's told them that there's this great interest in our organization, we want this thing, and they get all excited about it, and they haven't asked the basic questions, and they end up consuming 6 months of their lives chasing this thing that yields nothing. And the opportunity cost that is huge, because you're better off chasing, a few 100K deals than chasing one, £10 million deal that's not going to go anywhere. So just be really careful about that. So in terms of, these are reasons why we want to assess the opportunity. And the sorts of questions that you want to ask. Sorry, I hate bills. I should have changed it before I came. These are the questions that you want to ask for any kind of deal. Is there really an opportunity here for us? Okay, obvious questions, but it's just selling, and sales effectiveness is about stating the obvious. Can we actually compete? If you ever speak to a prospect, ask yourself the question: can we compete? Are we in a place where we're not going to get trounced by everybody else who's in this market? Is the company that we're speaking to going to support us through this? Can we actually win it? And is it worth winning? The is it worth winning question is really important, because it goes back to the opportunity cost thing, right? So, sometimes a really small deal is really worth winning, because A, you got more chance of winning it, but B, because there's a massive strategic benefit to you being inside that account, because the potential upside for you to sell more stuff to them is higher. And so if we look at the first question, is there actually an opportunity there? A lot of this boils down to just pure groundwork and research. What I expect my guys to do, and I do this myself, is whenever I engage with a new prospect or a new customer, I go to their website, and if they're a publicly traded company, they're going to have all kinds of information on their website anyway, particularly in the investor relations section of their website. They're going to have their annual report, and you read that annual report. It's really, really important, because that tells you, what their pains are, what their challenges are, what their expectations are for the business. It'll give you an indication of what promises they've made. So in some companies, it's we promise to our shareholders we're going to deliver 8%. I recognise that face, but I'll come back to you a bit later. Sorry, blast from the past. I was a student here. So I completely lost my thread now. Thank you for that. Okay, so some companies, they're all about that sort of growth expectation, growth promise. We're going to grow our revenue by 5% this year, right? Other companies, it's like, we need to expand and reach out into new markets and new geographies, over the next 12 months. Other companies, we need to launch this new product to compete with, Apple's latest iOS 8, iPhone 8, whatever it is. So everyone has a different strategic imperative, and it's those strategic imperatives that ultimately fund whatever you're trying to sell into these organizations. So doing that groundwork and research is absolutely vital, because at some point you're going to be asking for money, right? And that money has to be pegged to a budget, and that budget is going to be pegged to a business case, and that business case is going to be pegged to some sort of strategic initiative that the chief exec's kicked off, and he's got his VPs to run for him. Okay. So the customer's, business profile, well, we just spoke about that. Financial condition. It's all well and good, talking to these very large companies, and you get suckered into, you walk into, the foyer of this fantastic company, and they've got the best reception ever, with marble floors, and a bit like our reception actually, with a big fish tank. Everything looks really fantastic. You get taken in by the awesome nature of everything about this company. And if you haven't done your research, then you haven't picked up on the fact that they issued a profits warning 2 quarters ago, right? And the entire company is potentially looking at, sacking loads of people, laying people off, restructuring, reducing costs, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, the financial condition of that company is not good. So just, do not ever try to sell to a company that is, experiencing issues, because they go the way of Enron eventually. Things happen. Even if they don't completely cave, you tend to find that budgets across the board just freeze. And there's no money for new investment, and all they're looking to do is to restructure the business. There's opportunity in that, but you have to dig deeper to find it. Okay, because whenever there's change, there's opportunity, but if you're not aware of that change, and if you're not aware of the financial condition of the company, you're pitching all the wrong stuff to them potentially. And access to funds, absolutely key. At some point, you're going to ask for money, and never be afraid to ask for stuff, by the way. This is the other thing that I see people, novice salespeople, lots of time spent generating interest and getting cozy and close to people, but never really asking for the business, saying, can I have your business? When can I have your business? Before you can ask that question, they've got to have the money to be able to pay for your stuff, right? And so you have to just ask very direct questions about where's the money going to come from, how are you going to fund this, has someone written a business case for this? In B2B selling, there's always a business case. And there has to be somebody who's written that business case document, and it's usually somebody in the financial department who's been given the job of coming up with the sort of the spreadsheet and the business case for whatever project that you're trying to sell into. Okay, so is an opportunity. I've got a dedicated slide to this because I think this is really, really important. And if you haven't done so I'm getting myself clicks now on your website, but go to Future World's website and on my mentor page, no, it's on the blogs page, isn't it?
On the blog section, yeah.
So on the blog section, I've written a thing up about the compelling event. So have a read of that. Spent hours doing it, so I would really appreciate people reading it. It's really nice for me. But the compelling event to me is like, I ask this question every single time with every one of my guys, and when they come to me with something, I say, what's the compelling event? And so what is a compelling event, right? It's got a couple of components to it. The first one is there is a point in time, there is a deadline, right, by which they have to do something, okay? And then the second thing is there is a consequence of not doing something. And if there aren't these two things in play, then there's no compelling event, which means there's no compulsion upon the customer or the prospect to actually engage with you or with anybody else to do anything, okay? So there's lots of examples of that on my blog article. But for instance, compelling events are generated often by changes in the law. So if you're I don't know, the law might say, European Union might come down on us and say, right, you know what, you now have to maintain customer records for the next 10 years, okay? And suddenly, and you have to do this, everyone has to be in compliance of this new ruling by the end of this year. So the compelling event, there's a point in time, by the end of this year, you have to be able to store 10 years worth of customer data, right, for compliance reasons, because you're a bank. And the consequence of not doing that is that your chief exec or the officers of the business face some kind of litigious action from the authorities for not having complied. Okay, so that's a pretty strong compelling reason. And that will compel the business into investing in new storage technology that can handle the storage of, exponential amounts of additional customer data. Okay, so look for a compelling event, and ask them, when do you need to do this by? What's your internal deadline, and what's going to happen if you don't do it? What if you don't buy my stuff or somebody else's stuff? What's the cost to you of inaction? And once you've understood that stuff, you can start to position yourself more relevantly. Okay. I think in this room, if you're looking at building out startup companies and that sort of thing, you're going to have a very specific use case, I guess. It's going to be focused at a particular kind of customer, a particular industry, and you're going to have an expectation up front of what the outcomes of that technology is going to be to your customer. And that's actually, in my opinion, the wrong way of looking at things. I think sometimes you have to maintain some flexibility. Before you start talking to your customers about what wonderful things your product is going to do for them, you have to really find out what it is that they want and then adjust the message to what they want out of the relationship, right? So what is your issue, customer? It's not that my technology is going to help you save fuel across your fleet. It's going to be awesome. They may not give two hoots about that. So you've got to find out from them what their issues are. And you've got to find out how it affects them. And this is teaching you guys how to suck eggs. But because it's written down on here, and I have a bullet list of things, you should do this stuff and actually check these things off. And a lot of people just don't do this sort of stuff, right? It's common sense, bare basics. So just do it. What are the consequences? What's the payback to you of solving this problem? And then how do you expect me to be able to help you? Because if they've invited you in, then they will have some expectation of your capability. And if you muscled your way in, or you've managed to get an appointment somehow or some kind of meeting, then they'll still have an expectation of what you can do for them, which is why they accept the meeting in the first place. But really, asking them, what do you think we can do for you, right? And that'll give you a fairly honest perspective from their, it'll give you their honest perspective of where they think you fit. And then that gives an opportunity. If they've got it wrong, then you can sort of realign the goalposts, if you like. It gives you that opportunity. If you don't ask, you won't know. Okay. Can you even compete? Okay, 4 areas. I'll share these slides, actually, afterwards, and then you can refer to them. when you sell to a B2B organization, unless it's a really small company, they're going to have some kind of process. Okay, there's going to be formal decision criteria, and this changes from industry to industry. So, for example, one of the areas I look after is UK government, and in UK government, you just need to walk past any government building, and they'll chuck like a requirements document at you from out the window, right? They're so anal about documenting everything and having these formalized processes for procurement, and they're doing it because they want to protect public money, but really I don't think it gets in the way of innovation and moving forward. But you know, understand what their decision criteria is and align yourself to that. If you have the ability to be agile, then be agile. So if they're not hitting you with lots of formal decision criteria, don't introduce it into the mix just because you think it's a good idea. It's ridiculous. Just move yourself forward as quickly as you can. Does your solution actually fit their problems? Have you got the resources to be able to complete this deal? So you may have a fantastic product and you fit all the criteria, but you haven't got the people or the time or the manpower to actually deliver anything to them as part of that sales process. So, you know, just be honest with yourselves. Can we do this? Can we not do this? Is it better to qualify out? Sometimes better to qualify out in this instance and then go back to them afterwards. People appreciate that. Or what's your current relationship? So you may have the best of everything, but if your competitor, you know, is married to the chief executive officer, then you're probably not going to stand much of a chance of getting anywhere. It's an unfair world. Just remember that, right? So you think there are rules and people play by the rules. There's none of that, right? And actually, in selling, my secret tip to myself and everybody else is just try to find the unfair advantage as soon as you can. Okay. And once you have that, you're in a much better position. Because ultimately, I shouldn't say this. It's not all about compliance. It's about getting the deal. Right? As long as you're legal and not doing anything silly and naughty, just do what you got to do to get the deal. Okay. Right. So unique business value. Another very important point. So you know you've got your head around the compelling event. So you know, there's this point of time, and you've got the solution fit. Your solution isn't necessarily unique. We find that all the time at Salesforce. So when we launched the company back in 1999, the reason we call Salesforce is because our first product was Salesforce Automation. So this is software that allows sales guys to sort of track their leads, opportunities, accounts, contacts, all that sort of stuff. And in 1999, everyone thought we were goners because at that point I was working at Oracle, and Oracle was the #1 vendor in the space. Okay, they acquired a company called Siebel that I worked at. And Siebel was the #1 CRM platform at that time. Big, you know, gorilla in the market, multi-billion-pound company, acquired by Oracle, massive new resources. Salesforce comes onto the scene. Well, they're going to die, right? Because everybody does CRM, and you're not adding anything new to the table. So just be conscious that whatever you're trying to sell, there's probably 15 other companies selling the same stuff. So what actually sets you apart from those guys? What is your unique business value? For Salesforce, it was the fact that, you know, if you're rolling out Oracle, the cost of licenses was typically at least £1 million. So Oracle don't get out of bed for less than £1 million, right? And then you're looking more like, you know, 8 million, 10 million, up to 20 million. I was involved on the team that sold to British Telecom back in 2000 when they were on the news because they had a £3 billion debt mountain. And in that situation, we sold them $14 million worth of new software licenses. So it's just very, very expensive. And that was just the software licenses. And then you get the likes of Accenture and Capgemini or Deloitte or one of the other big consulting firms coming in to do all the business change, transformation, implementation of the software, and that adds another 100 million to the bill, right? And our unique business value was, we're in the cloud, right? All you got to do is go to our website, enter your registration details, give us your credit card, hit the submit button, and bang, you're up and running. You know, there's none of this having to buy software, spending millions on it, and then spending another, you know, 3 or 4 times that on the implementation services. That was our unique business value, and really, you know, you will have this unique business value built into your product because otherwise you wouldn't exist as a vendor. But that's not always relevant to the customer you're speaking to. So once you've done the research, and if this customer, for example, wants to crack into new geographies, new territories, it might be that your product is much better at helping them to do that because you support currency and languages in a way that the other guys don't. Whatever, but just think about what your unique business value is. Okay. Can you even win? This is a real tough one, right? Because when you're a young company, and I keep talking about startups because, Riz and Future Worlds, it's all like startups and incubation and all that really cool stuff. Can you even win? It's interesting because people look at Oracle and Microsoft and Salesforce now and they say, well, of course you can win. You've got everything going for you. You've got the traction, you've got the momentum, you've got all the relationships with all these big customers, you've got the brand recognition, you've got the loyalty, you've got the established customer base, you've got everything. Of course you're going to win. But all these customers had to start somewhere. And before you became a multi-billion-dollar company, you had to be a 50 grand a year company. And you still had to win stuff. Really this comes back to my thing about having the unfair advantage. Selling, a lot of selling is about establishing trust with people. When you're offering to solve somebody's problem, what they don't want you to do is create more problems, right? They're looking to improve an aspect of their business, they're looking to possibly take out costs, they're looking for new revenue models, they're looking for ways in which you can help them to transform and improve their business. And a lot of these companies look to software companies actually to help them do that, because software companies typically spend an awful lot of time with very smart people looking at specific business problems, and they find innovative solutions to those problems, right? And they've typically thought about these problems more than these companies have themselves. So they like to bring in software companies, could get free consulting out of it, and then possibly also some kind of solution out of it. And it's all about trust, because they're looking for people that can help them to deliver something with no risk whatsoever, okay? And you need to start developing those sorts of relationships. And what we did at Salesforce, and I worked at 2 startups actually before I joined Salesforce, and I had to do a lot of this back then as well, but you don't have any relationships initially with some of these companies. So do you really actually go after those companies? I chose not to. So I got inquiries from some very well-known brands, and I chose not to chase them. Because I thought, you know what, it's going to be a real uphill battle. They have no idea who I am, never dealt with them before. I don't have an unfair advantage. So how do I get an unfair advantage? You know what, I'm going to call the people that I already know, right? And I'll speak to those guys. They know me, they trust me. They'll give me the meeting, and they know that I've delivered before, so I'll probably deliver again. If you don't have anyone that you can sell to like that, who has previously trusted you, then bring somebody into your team who has those relationships. It's really important. Otherwise, you'll be fighting an uphill battle for a very, very long time. So establish what your inside support levels are like. As you get more established, you're going to have relationships and people that you can leverage. Sorry, bit of a Freudian slip there. Leverage. Okay. So you need and that inside support is the unfair advantage. It's people that will give you more access than they will give to other people because they've dealt with you. And it's all about risk mitigation and really cool things like that. And all this flows into each other. So executive credibility. The people that ultimately make the decisions about making investments in anything, software, hardware, whatever, services. I said before that there's this thing about when you look at the company report and there are strategic initiatives that come down into specific projects. So this is why you need to do your homework. So you need to get in front of the execs, and you've got to pitch your product to them. And when you're pitching your product to them, they're looking to you to give them advice. And it's quite daunting. Sometimes I stand up in front of boards of companies, right? And one of our biggest customers is Unilever. Massive, the biggest player in their space, right? They own every consumer brand imaginable, right? You name it, they probably own it. And when they say to you, come on Salesforce, come and tell us how you can help us improve our business, you're thinking, how the hell do I do that? You're massive. You're the most successful company, in your space out there. What could I possibly do to help you get any bigger and better than you already are? And it's quite interesting. So this is what they want from you, but don't be daunted by it because you actually know more about your stuff than they know about your stuff. And large companies aren't like small. In small companies, you have a small number of very experienced, very knowledgeable people who know their thing really well. But in large, complex companies, they thrive on, people from the outside and other organizations helping them, guiding them on their journey. Their chief exec ultimately makes a decision about what they do and what their strategy is. But those strategies and decisions are very much a function of what they can glean from the people around them and from the markets around them. And they actually have a huge amount of respect for external organizations that can come in and give sort of like an unblinkered almost perspective on their business. Because when you're inside a business, you don't always know what the perception of your business is from the outside looking in. And when you go in, you can almost sort of like look at things with fresh eyes. And you can say, you know what, there's an obvious glaring problem that you have over here. I've spoken to the guys, and this is what they're telling me, and you don't know this, so I'm presenting it to you. So build that exact credibility, do your research, getting the meeting with these guys is that's a whole different presentation, right? And again, send me an invoice, I'll show you how it's done. But once you've got the meeting, don't waste opportunity, do your research, get the credibility, and once you have that credibility, you're in a much, much better position to actually, move forward with them and do stuff. This cultural thing is really interesting. So at Salesforce, so when we first opened the Salesforce office here in Europe, we had a bunch of Americans come over, right? Rollerblades and shorts and Bermuda shirts and all that kind of stuff just flying around the office. And so we've got a meeting with a Prudential this afternoon. Are you ready for this? You can't go looking like that. It's the Prudential, right? But this is us. We're Salesforce, really cool and trendy and hip and do things in a really sort of innovative and new way. That sort of culture, and that's an extreme example. But some companies are fast moving, some are slow moving. I'll come back to government. They're seriously slow moving. That's got its pros and cons. So once you're in there, you're in there. Other people find it hard to crack in. But just getting into government organisation is extraordinarily hard. And from a cultural fit perspective, actually Salesforce struggles a little bit because all our marketing and our external messaging is very geared towards sort of fast moving, very Silicon Valley, very colourful, ethos, and government just doesn't like that. So really, you have to be a bit of a chameleon sometimes, and just be aware of who you're talking to, and don't show up in Bermuda shorts and rollerblades if it's the Chancellor of the Exchequer or something like that. The informal decision criteria is all the stuff that isn't written down, right? So you've got the formal decision criteria, which is the checklist of things that, we do this, we do this. And you know what happens, right? You get a checklist of stuff, and every vendor ticks every box. Nobody ever says we can't do this. Everyone says, yeah, of course we can do it. And when you're selling technology, you can mold technology by and large to do whatever you want it to do, right? But it's the informal decision criteria that often influences the deal in quite a significant way. So the informal decision criteria is stuff like, there's some chap that you're talking to, and his career, his future, his promotion depends upon whatever you can do for him. We call it king making. So if you can spot the guys who have some sort of vested interest in you doing well in that organization, then turn her, or queen making. I've got to be careful, haven't I? So turn her or him into a king or a queen. Okay, and that forms part of your informal decision criteria. Are the subjective factors that affect the decision? Are the things that they're not telling you? They're always this. And it's that reading between the lines when you have the conversations, trying to sort of get to the bottom of what those informal decision criteria are. And a lot of this stuff you can get, this is industrial gossip. So if you're talking to let's say you're selling to British Telecom, even if you're new into British Telecom, you're going to find that Accenture and Capgemini and Deloitte and every other IBM and everybody else has a foot in the door there. So if you have friends or family who know people in those organizations, speak to them, because they will give you all the sort of informal insights into that organization. And they will tell you that there's a deal to be had there, or there's nothing there at all. They're just yanking your chain because they have to, because there's something that they have to do, and they've got to tick some internal boxes. They're not going to buy anything. Political alignment, who's going to make the decisions, and how do you influence those people? I'll talk more about that in just a moment. Have I just gone backwards? Okay, is it worth winning? More, is it worth winning? Don't wait for time. Okay.
I've got a bit of time.
I've got a bit of time, okay. So, is it worth winning? More questions about revenue, future revenue, profitability, degree of risk, strategic value. All these are factors. So, if you imagine this is a bit of a, it's a spider diagram. You have to tick at least 3 of these in order to pursue something. There has to be short-term revenue, particularly if you're a startup, because that sort of stuff funds your operations. Future revenue, well, if you're going to sell one thing and then that's the end of that, then there's probably not a lot of point doing it, because you'll be able to find another customer who can give you future revenue, and it's that long-term run rate stuff that's going to make you bigger and stronger as a business. And is it profitable? This is hilarious, right? Because I've seen deals where people, it's £1 million deal. right? But it cost them 1.2 million to deliver the deal, right? And they've lost 200 grand, and they weren't even aware of that fact. Happens a lot in big consulting firms where they sign up. I can't mention names yet because it's not been made public, but I'm aware of a big retail company that signed up to like an £8 billion outsourcing contract to a big outsourcer, and the outsourcer's just losing money on it hand over fist. The sales guy who sold that got a massive commission paycheck, right? That's probably part of the reason why there's no profit left in the deal anymore. But yeah, just don't look at the numbers and think whoopee. Look behind the numbers. Degree of risk. Are we? I don't know. Is there stuff that we're pitching? Is it? How much risk is there to us? Can we deliver what they're asking for? Ruben knows me quite well, I think, don't you, Ruben? And Ruben's accused me sometimes of being overambitious about some things, just sort of here's a thing that we can sell to a prospect, really have I miscalculated our ability to deliver this thing? Is there a big risk to us? Because if you don't deliver, it's worse than egg on your face. It's terrible. It affects your brand, the reputation of the business. It affects morale within the people, with the people that you have in the organisation. It's just a really, pardon the word, but a really crappy hole to get out of. So just before you end up in that hole, what could cause our solution to fail? My experience says the number one thing that causes solutions to fail inside customer organizations are the customer employees and their ability to sort of react to the things that you need. So a typical example is you've won some business to deliver some product, and part of that delivery is that you do some upfront business analysis so you can configure and tweak that product to fit whatever the use case is. And they don't make people available, right? Because everyone on their side is too busy. They've signed the check, they've done their bit, and now you're into delivery mode. And their business as usual, their day jobs just keep them too busy, and you don't get their time, and before you know it, you're starting to breach all your deadlines, and your project plan is going out the window, and it's always going to be your fault, right? Never their fault, because they're the customer and they're always right. So are these things that are going to affect your company? And if there's any hint of it at all, then you need to raise those things as red flags on day one. And don't be afraid to say to the customer, these are the risks that I've identified, and keep a risk register. Even if you're not a professional services company and you have a product, keep a risk register that you share with the customer, and then, if it comes to it and you have to cover your backsides, you've got something to cover your backside with. And then it's not just about covering your backside. If you can show evidence that these things were raised as risks, there's going to be a cost implication to somebody to remedy that problem, and it's going to mean bringing more people in or more consulting days or whatever, and the customer's more likely to spend money on that if there's a risk register in place. And what's the strategic value to your business of winning this deal? Again, is there a future opportunity? Is it going to help you displace a competitor? And is that displacement going to help you in future competitive deals? And is this particular sale going to help us to improve our product? And if it is, maybe we should work harder to win it. And there are very rare cases where it's worthwhile dropping the price on something. You should never drop the price. But in situations where that implementation of your product is going to help you improve it and make it better, there's a case for doing that. I never drop the price on anything, right? Because it's not just that it's a show of weakness. It's a show that you haven't been able to prove the business value of your solution. And by dropping the price, all you're doing is you're creating a competitive environment that's bad for everybody. Because you set an expectation in the market then for what your stuff is worth. And the next time you go in, because people talk, this prospect will have a mate who works in another company that you're trying to sell to, and they'll hear that you drop the price, and before you know it, the entire market expectation around what your thing is worth just drops. So it's better often not drop the price at all, and just try and sell at full price, but work harder on justifying the value of that. And that comes back to all the research and the number crunching and the sort of the impact of the business, the compelling event. What impact are we going to have on your business off the back of this stuff that we're selling to you? Okay? So, strategies. These are competitive strategies, okay? And it's all very high-level stuff, but it's a nice way of compartmentalizing the different approaches that you can take when you're speaking to a prospect. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Things that you can do. I had to count that because I've forgotten. It's a pentagon, isn't it? That's right, yeah. I know my shapes. I went to Southampton Uni and I got taught about geometry and pentagons. So you can develop stuff. You can defend. You can develop an account. You can defend an account. You can fragment. You can go full frontal. You can go flanking, and I'll explain in a moment what those things are. Okay. So your assessment of your opportunity and your competitive position should determine which one of these attack strategies that you take with your customer. Okay. So if there's no compelling event and there's no unique business value, you're looking at using these top strategies. Okay. If you have a compelling event, you've got unique business value, or if you haven't got a compelling event now but you think you can create one, then you're looking at attacking using one of these strategies. So without going into too much detail, frontal is a bit like, who's seen Braveheart? Scottish dudes with kilts, right? So imagine a load of Scottish guys, right, running at you with blue faces, right? That's a full frontal assault, right? We've got a massive advantage. We've got more people than you. We're really powerful. We're Scottish, no underwear. We're all out to get you, right? You've got no chance whatsoever, right? That's a full frontal assault, okay? And this is by far the riskiest one, because what happened to Braveheart, whatever it's called, he got hung, drawn, and quartered, didn't he? Didn't end too well for him, but I suppose he delivered on the bigger picture, right? Flanking is what we call changing the goalposts. These strategies come from sort of military, Sun Tzu, art of war type stuff. So flanking is where you sort of change the goalpost. So if you don't like what you're hearing, and if there isn't a clear fit for what you do, but you want to stay relevant and involved, then rather than changing your product or service, work on changing the customer's goalposts. So who's that comedian? Tim Nice but Dim. But who's the actual Harry Enfield? Who's that character? You don't want to do that. You want to do this. You know what I'm talking about? Everyone's too young, aren't they? Yeah. I look young. But so there's a Harry Enfield character, and I think is he a mother-in-law or a father-in-law, something like, I can't remember now. He's an in-law of some shape or form, and every time he meets his son-in-law or daughter-in-law, and the in-law's doing something, it's like, you don't want to do that, you want to do this. And this is what I'm talking about. Flanking is basically doing that to a customer, saying, no, you don't want to do that, that's nonsense. If you do that, you'll be in a world of pain. Like if you do that, that's what they did. And look where they are now. Look at Enron, right? That's what they did. You don't want to do that. So it's not as, not as sort of flippantly as that, but backed up with evidence of the consequences of doing things the way they're doing it. We do it often with government customers. So government customers show up with these really detailed lists of things that they want, and then we suddenly say, no, we're not responding to this because this is not what you need, right? If you do that, then this will happen. What you really need is a proper customer engagement platform that's going to help you, bring on board your citizens into this beautiful ecosphere of communities and all that kind of stuff, and that's going to deliver more impact. And you can only do that when you have this sort of innate knowledge of your customer, right? And of the industry. Fragment. Okay, fragment is there's a deal to be had, but you can't get the whole thing, right? And I think this is quite relevant to small companies and startup companies. So what Oracle or Microsoft will do is that they have so much technology and so many products, they'll go in and say, we did a whole lot. SAP are brilliant at this. SAP don't get out of bed for less than 10 million, right? They go in, they'll do like a $100 million deal because they'll just throw everything at that customer. And they've got the resources to do it as well. So if you're up against SAP and you're trying to sell, elements of things that might be relevant or similar to what SAP does, you really have to fragment. So you've got to say, we're going to compartmentalize what we do, and we're going to say just this one piece of the overall puzzle, and we cooperate really well with everybody around us. So we'll integrate with SAP, we'll integrate with all these guys and your billing system and that system and your phone systems. But this is what we do, and we do this really, really well. In the early days of Salesforce, we did a lot of that. We had to fragment a lot. So we say, okay, the customer would come to us with the longest of requirements and say, no, we're going to focus on just this piece, and we're going to do it really, really well. And it goes back to that sort of best of breed argument versus, buying a company that does everything. So you do these things when you actually have, a recognizable opportunity, a compelling event, business value. The top two strategies are where your position is quite weak, but you don't necessarily want to walk away from the customer. So you can choose to develop. So this is, you develop an account where you don't really have a presence. So you kind of put them on the back burner a little bit. You do account management, you spend time with them, you set up meetings to see them regularly. And the reason you want to sort of develop is because there's a good chance that your competitor is going to win that deal. And very often you can go, yeah, this happened, I mean, you'd be surprised, right? Even when your competitors won, right, nothing is sealed until they've messed up the project, right? So there's a high likelihood they will mess up the project, right? Because they're incompetent. All competitors are incompetent, right? And so you go back in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, you pick up the phone and say, oh, how's it going? Right? That's part of your defense strategy. They're going to say, develop strategy. They're going to say, you know what, those Microsoft guys, nightmare. They haven't got a sodding clue. They've showed up with all this really cool technology. It's all vaporware, marketingware, you know, none of it's been delivered, but we're not seeing the benefit that we want to see. So what can we do? Oh, it's interesting you say that, actually, because we can, you know, step into the door and have a longer conversation with them. There's lots of mileage in developing relationships, and you know, in that situation, you can actually use it to your advantage because you're the knight in shining armor and going in there rescuing a horrible event. Defending is where you already have a presence in the account, and you're at risk of losing the account. Okay, so you have to really work hard to defend. And defending, it's really, it can sap a lot of energy and time from your organization. And there's no sort of return necessarily on that investment that you're making because all you're doing is defending. So you've got your sort of footprint inside the account and you're sort of building a big wall around it, sandbags, all that kind of stuff. You know, you're hiding behind sandbags, you've got bow and arrow, firing arrows at all the competitors who are sort of like trying to take your position. And very, very calorie intensive. And you know, large businesses can do this because they have the resource to do it, and they have dedicated departments that are focused on customer retention. So with Salesforce, we have CSG, the Customer Success Group, and they get measured on non-attrition of customers. So their job is to maintain 99% levels of customer retention at Salesforce, because it's always, you know, much more expensive to get a new customer than it is to retain an existing customer. That's a fact across the board. So we have a built-in defense department. That sounds really like defense department. Call me General Mudge. So we have a dedicated, very well-funded organization that sole purpose is to defend our presence in these accounts. And if you don't have that, just question whether you should do it or not at all, and just take it into context. So everything that I've said now plays out in the next few slides. So I'm going to skip past them really quickly. The key point in the full frontal thing is we say you have to have a 3-to-1 advantage. If you've got a full frontal, you've got to be damn sure that you're going to win, because you've got to be quick, you've got to have the element of surprise, you know, and you've got to have, SAP do this, they have so many people, right? It's a massive organization. Oracle do this. I've been to Oracle meetings, right? You walk into a customer boardroom, there's like 20 people around the boardroom table, right? And you're shaking hands with all these people that you don't know, and they're all Oracle people, and the customer hasn't showed up yet, right? It's ridiculous. Happens all the time in large companies. But this is an indication of the level of resource and sort of power that they have as an organization, that they can have that 3-to-1 advantage. So they can have every base covered off. You know, they've got the strategic relationships, they've got the exec relationships, they've got the entire market ecosystem sewn up and working to their favor, and they go in full frontal, and they can do that. As a startup, by and large, you've got no chance, right? So just be very careful about doing that. And it's just very, very time consuming. And you'd end up looking like fools. It's like, you know, rush in, get shot dead. Rush in, get shot dead. Rush, and it'll just keep happening. And before you know it, all the resources of the business will be gone. Flanking. So moving the goalposts, really, it is same as saying don't play by their rules. So they've set the rules, they've set the criteria, they've set the guidelines, and you're just saying, nah, that's not what you want to do. What we want to do, you know, you want to go from A to B, and what we're saying is, yeah, we know you want to do A, but we're going to give you A plus more, right? So if you're going to change the rules, there has to be there's got to be something in it for them as well. So you've got to give them something better. Not, we're going to give you the same thing, but change the rules. That doesn't work. Okay, I'm going back. If you can successfully flank, the competition's in trouble, because if they've allowed you to sort of change the rules, they will allow you to add new criteria to the selection process, and hopefully the competitors won't be aware of that new selection criteria. In government, it doesn't always work that way because they're sort of like open and transparent to a fault. They'll share everything. Even when you sit in a room and ask them a question, someone's job is to go away and just email those questions and answers to all the other competitors, all the other vendors. So it doesn't always work very well in government, but in other sectors, in private sector, it can work quite well. And when they allow you to change the criteria or add criteria, that in itself is a show of trust from them to you. And it's an indication that you've done the research, you've done the homework, and you have value that you can genuinely add to this business. So when Unilever invites you in to present to the board, what you've done is present something really compelling to them. That's going to have a transformational impact to their business. Okay, so nearly done. Spoke about defending. Just very calorie intensive. You spend a lot of time just building new relationships, just talking to people. No guarantee of business coming off the back of it. We spoke about developing. Just a quick few guidelines. So you may have a big account. That account will have multiple opportunities in there. You might be chasing one today, but there may be other opportunities. It's okay to have a different strategy for each opportunity. Okay. The only rules of thumb are if you adopt a strategy for an opportunity, stick with it, unless something significantly changes, and don't mix up strategies. That just becomes messy and gets you nowhere. I'm going to stop actually in just a couple of minutes, but before I stop, I'm going to talk about political alignment. And this is, people say, it's about who you know. That's half the story. I say it's what you know about who you know, right? And politicians are very good at this, right? Digging up dirt and just, you shouldn't be digging up dirt on your customers, but it's, what you know about somebody is really important because it tells you what that individual person's motivations are, what their aspirations and personal career goals are. What level of influence they may actually have versus what they really have. So what we like to do at Salesforce, we like to map out the organization, and so we have the top level people and all these guys, and we mark off the roles that they play, and we tag them. So we say, he's a user, he evaluates, he's an actual decision maker, he approves, and this guy's our sponsor. And if you haven't got a sponsor, then just give up, because if there isn't somebody inside the organization who's prepared to back you up and guide you around the organization, support you, advise you, help you, give you inside information, then you don't have the unfair advantage, and the chances of actually getting anything out of them is quite slim. So we map the buying roles in these sorts of charts. We categorize people in our account bases too. So especially when you're a technology company, it's important to know how people will take to your product and to your technology. Right, so in a customer organization, some guys are going to be innovators. You've got visionaries, pragmatists, conservatives, and laggards. Government, full of laggards everywhere, right? Financial services, lots of innovators and visionaries. Utilities, lots of pragmatists. Manufacturing, again, lots of pragmatists. So yeah, this sort of bell curve distribution is kind of affected by the industry that you're in. And then, what is it that they want, these people? So what they want determines what you pitch to them. So people who are innovators, they want all the state-of-the-art stuff. They're into buying. They'll trial your stuff. They'll test your stuff. And you should be selling them on visions that home in on sort of product excellence and innovation. And then down the bottom, you've got laggards. They don't want to change. Everything's fine the way it is. Why should we change? Business works. We're making money. And they just want to protect themselves, their careers, their lives, their business units, their people, everything. They don't want to change anything. And then, so it goes without saying, you should track how much contact you have with people. I make sure, we use Salesforce internally, obviously. We don't write this stuff down as much anymore. It's all captured in our system. But if you're not talking to people, the chances of selling them, it stands to reason, right? We have rules in Salesforce. So any sales guy should be sending 5,000 emails per week, okay? He should be, that's quite a lot, isn't it? 5,000 emails a week, 50 phone calls, 5 meetings. And that's that's the rule of thumb. If someone's doing less than that, it means that they're putting themselves at risk of not meeting their quotas and targets. Okay, so this carries on. The last thing I'm going to say is rank versus influence. Don't get caught out. The two things are very, very different. So the most powerful man in the world, allegedly, is the President of the United States of America, right? Serious rank. But the First Lady probably has more influence. It's my life all over. All right? Thank you. Yeah, there are so many sources now. There are paid-for sources like D&B and that sort of thing, and we actually have subscriptions to those platforms. You can pay LinkedIn a bit of money, and they'll give you sort of detailed access on people that are running those businesses, and there's a lot of stuff you can glean actually from that. And then, if you're selling into an industry, you kind of need to know about that industry already. So you should already know who the players are in that industry. You should already know what their motivating factors are. And if you really don't know, then maybe you shouldn't be selling into that space. Yeah. So we have a process at Salesforce called the gap process. So at every stage, we have the sales guys, and then we have the technical guys who sit alongside them, who are also involved in the sales process. And it's those guys' jobs to keep an eye on where the gaps might be in our technology offering for any deal. And they raise what we call gap records in every single sales situation. And all those gap records get fed into our product management. And product management are receiving a constant stream of product gaps every single day. And they have systems that look at these gaps and prioritize them, group them together, cluster them. And then they use those gaps to sort of prioritize product development. Now, because these gaps might be linked to deals, if it's a really big deal that's really important to us, really strategic, then they can prioritize those gaps over gaps that affect smaller customers, smaller deals. So a lot of we launch releases 4 times a year, and a lot of those releases actually contain features that have been influenced by sales cycles that we've been involved in as salespeople.
So that's probably all we've got time for, unfortunately, today. Mudge might stick around for a few minutes if you want to catch him. I just wanted to thank him really one last time for coming along, giving a really great talk today.